especially in politics, there's such a divide, and I think it stems from you hear what you want to hear, right? Once you've decided that you want to support someone, it's really hard to think critically about what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That seems like what you were kind of where you were going with that too.
I think, well, circling back to the podcast that I haven't heard that you brought up, I wonder the anxiety calm spectrum. Critical thinking and calm are really difficult things to balance, I think. They can be difficult things to balance. I'm not saying that you can't, and I would say that surely the most foundational, strong calm comes from being able to critically assess something and get to a point where you feel comfortable. But I wonder, you know, the quickest way to calm would be to take somebody at face value, you know. And if people are looking for calm, then critical thought would impede the quickest path.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. I don't know if I like that idea.
No, I mean, it's kind of a scary idea because you'd like to believe that critical thought is what leads the way in most situations, you know?
Yeah, or that without it, we're not going to move forward. Mm-hmm. I guess that's what you're saying.
Without it, we're not going to move forward?
Without thinking critically, we're not going to move forward. We would just stay statically where we are.
I think you can move forward without critical thought. It will just
I guess you can make change without thinking about it. You just have no concept of what it's going to do.
Yeah, it's directionless.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I think we should continue to think critically. It's just hard in this time frame because right now there aren't a lot of things that anybody agrees on for the facts to like build. To build a critical understanding of the situation would require more foundational blocks than we have.
Yeah. Well, I think my understanding is that there are people that are building on it in smaller communities and probably within, say, the medical world or the scientist world. I would assume, and I guess I don't know this for sure, but I would assume that there are facts that people are, maybe 99% of the people in those worlds are agreeing are facts, and they're building on those. But then what filters out to the general public, and because I don't have a science background, I don't have a medical background at all. I used to faint in health class every single week. I don't know anything about any of this. So, but I am a critical thinker. So when information comes filtered to me, I do think about it and I try to consider it, but I also have no background. So then I'm trying to do my best to keep up with all of this new information constantly, and I don't know what's right and what's wrong and what to build on. Whereas, yeah, I would assume that the people that actually have studied these types of things and have a background in it and understand what they're talking about, when they get new information, they already have such a building block to add to. Unfortunately, it's just not those people then that are able to filter the information out to the general public. It's a whole mess of people that have an agenda or just aren't that good at writing or don't understand the concept so they get it wrong or whatever it is.
Well, it's interesting because this is where the idea of critical thought being anxiety-inducing comes back into play. Because I on my adventures around the internet recently, there was discussions about the idea of ventilators and ventilators. As far as the general public is concerned, is something that's super necessary,
right,
for the survival of people,
right.
And then I saw a discussion, purely anecdotal, where a doctor was skeptical of ventilators as some information that, again, I haven't seen with my eyes, and that's not really the important part. The idea is that a fact was stated that 80% of people that go on the ventilators end up dying.
Right.
Because your body ends up giving up.
Right.
And so, but you take the idea that there's like professionals that are building information, and surely there are, but then within the professional circles, there are people that could be dissenting, and they're trying to figure it out, and then maybe that ends up being the leader situation that you described earlier, where it's like within the community, there then has to be somebody that puts together some sort of all of the disparate pieces to come up with a coherent understanding of this situation.
Yes.
And then that becomes the thing that gets spread out to the rest of the world.
Yeah. Well, I think this current situation is such a nightmare, because if they were studying another virus that wasn't taking over the world right now, that we're not all aware of, we wouldn't hear that. Yes, so okay, 80%. I've actually also heard that too, and now it's up to me to think about, if I get this virus, do I go to the hospital? Do I want to be put on a ventilator? Am I going to die because I get put on a ventilator? But then then you also hear other doctors saying, well, 80% of people die because you're not put on a ventilator till the last minute. You're put on because you're dying. It's like a last chance thing. It's not the first thing you do when you go into the hospital. You don't just immediately get put up onto some ventilator. So there's all these, you're hearing all of this, and I don't know how I don't have the background for this. I don't know why I should even have to be thinking about this. I didn't even know what a ventilator was until a year ago, when my grandmother had to go on one in the hospital, So, and even now, I still really don't understand exactly how it works. I don't want to understand how it works because I might faint. This is not what I should be worrying about. There should be a group of people figuring out the best practices. And it's also complicated, because the fact that it gets filtered out and into all of our minds, and then everyone has to have an opinion about it. And the internet is a terrible, terrible place for all of this, because people are just arguing with no understanding of how any of this works.
Well, not everybody has to have an opinion on it. And I guess that's the difference between critical thinking and thought management, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you would necessarily call it, but that seems as good a description as any presently. The idea that it's like, wow, there's a lot of information out there. I am not going to be any closer to understanding it at the end of this panic that I'm feeling temporarily than the beginning. So maybe it's okay to not think about this presently.
Yeah.
And for some people, that can immediately be pointed out as well, you're just burying your head in the sand. But it's I think it's just a recognition of there are things that I can control, things that I can't control, and things that I have the ability to have opinions on, and things I don't have the ability to have opinions on.
Right. Yes. And I think it's very difficult, and I think a lot of people have what I have self-diagnosed myself as having, which is anxiety and obsessive compulsive thoughts. And so when something like this comes up, I have to actively fight my brain to tell myself, okay, you don't have the background. If you do end up having to go to the hospital, you're going to have to trust the doctor. You're not going to be able to control this situation. But my anxiety OCD thing is telling me, you must get to the bottom of this. You must have a plan. You must figure out whether or not ventilators are good or bad. You must know, because if you don't know, you're definitely going to get the virus. You're definitely going to stop breathing. You're definitely going to go to the hospital, and the doctor is definitely going to give you the wrong thing.
Right.
If you don't figure this out right now, you have to constantly think about it, because if you don't, something bad will happen.
Yeah.
And of course that's just
That's horse plop.
It's that is exactly what it is. Yeah, but so it's fighting, and this is me, someone who has been managing this since I was 7 years old, this way of thinking and being aware of it in some capacity, and only being more and more aware of it as I'm getting older. But I believe that a lot of people don't even realize that that's how their brain is working, and then they just feed into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then one person comes across another person on the internet, and they don't even know each other, so they're just upset.
Mm-hmm.